Hey everyone.
Hey guys.
Welcome to another Travel Therapy Mentor video. We just got back from Latin America, 2.5, almost 3-month trip. So tonight we're going to be doing a recap of that trip, some of the pros, some of the cons, some of our favorite places. I know a lot of you guys that follow us on Instagram have been following the trip and asking questions about places we went and adding places to your own bucket list of places to go to. So hopefully we can give some insight on that. Whitney's going to introduce us, and I'm going to get this video shared in a couple groups.
All right, hey guys, I know a lot of you that are tuning in have probably watched our videos before and followed us for a while, but if you happen to be new to our page, to our channel, my name is Whitney Aiken.
And I'm Jared Kazaza.
And we're both physical therapists. We've been travel PTs for about 7 years now, and we spend quite a bit of our time between U.S. travel contracts, traveling internationally for fun. We get the question a lot whether or not we work internationally, and we do not. But we have used the flexibility of our careers as U.S. healthcare travelers to be able to take extended periods of time off. And then actually for us, we only worked full-time as travel PTs in the U.S. for about 3 full years before we transitioned to what we call kind of semi-retirement, where now we only work a few months a year as physical therapists. And then we spend the rest of the year, one, working on our online business, Travel Therapy Mentor, where we mentor current and aspiring healthcare travelers, and then also traveling domestically and internationally for fun. So in our time as travelers outside of work, we've had the opportunity to road trip all over the U.S. We've been to almost all 50 states. We've been to 49 states so far, and we've been to now 35 countries. And 4 of those were new countries that we just went on this trip. So yeah, we want to give you guys some more information about our trip, the things that we enjoyed, some of the challenges that we faced. We definitely had kind of a lot of ups and downs this trip compared to some other trips. So we want to tell you a little bit about that. But I know some of you guys are tuning in live, and then some of you guys will watch later on the replay. I know tonight is Easter, so a lot of you guys may not be tuning in live. But we'd love it if you'd say hello in the comments if you're watching live and let us know. Hi Megan, hi. Oh, I turned us around somehow. How did I do that? I was just clicking on the people that left comments. Hi Megan, hi Nick. Can somebody let me know if I turned us completely around? Because on my screen it looks like I turned us around somehow. And I don't know how I did that.
Looks like it.
I just clicked on the comments and it turned it around. Sorry guys, technical difficulties. We've only been doing these videos for 5 years now, and somehow I've turned us around.
It says it's right. Okay.
Megan, are we sideways or are we normal? Because on ours we turned sideways somehow.
All right, just put it back up there.
Huh. Okay. Well, we look weird on ours, but as long as we look okay on y'all's, then I guess that's fine.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I don't know. Facebook Live has changed some over the last several months, so there's some new features on there and it's a little bit wonky. But anyway, as I mentioned, Jared got our video shared in a few different groups so more people can join on with us live. If you are watching live, we'd love if you'd say hi in the comments. If you're watching later on the replay, type in replay. And I know some of you guys will also listen later on the podcast, so thank you for listening.
Yeah, so it was a fun trip. This was one of our shorter trips, even though it was almost 3 months. We've done 5-month, 4-month, 2-month, and this was a 3-month trip. We've found in the past that probably 4- and 5-month trips are just too long. A lot of people never take trips longer than 1 or 2 weeks, and 1 or 2 weeks you're still excited about going and everything's amazing and you're having a great time, but longer trips start to wear on you, and the newness wears off and you start to miss home. We've really found that on our longer trips. So we thought that 2 or 3 months is probably more realistic time frame to do some of these trips, and even 3 months we figured out that we were kind of ready to come home by the end. But it was still an amazing trip. We saw some awesome places. I just think that's kind of the nature of travel. Once you move too often, and you're wondering what the Airbnb situation is going to be like, and if the bed's going to be comfortable, and all the little things that you run into traveling, it starts to wear on you after a while.
Well, and especially with the type of trip that we were planning and doing, where we were moving somewhere new pretty much every week, and that really gets draining. I think a better way to do it would be if you were going to be gone for 2 or 3 months, but you only went to 1 or 2 places. Like if you stayed a whole month somewhere, or at least 2 to 3 weeks, because we were just moving so often, and we knew going into it that was going to be draining. But there's also a lot of places that we just really want to see, and a lot of things we want to do, so we were trying to jam a lot into one trip. Actually, for those of you guys that have followed us for a long time, we had a Latin America trip planned in 2020 where we were going to be gone for 5 months, and we were trying to hit almost all of the countries in Central and South America in that 5-month period.
Yeah, it was about 15 countries we were planning to go to.
Yeah, and so now with this trip, we only set aside about 2.5 months. So we knew obviously it was way too much to take on to try to see all of those countries. And in addition to that, there's certain COVID restrictions that really make it very challenging to travel to some of those countries. So we only picked 5 countries for this trip to be able to pack into that 2.5 months. But even with that, it was still pretty hectic.
Yeah, so we went to Mexico first. Well, we started out in CSM in Texas. From there, we went to Mexico. We went to Guatemala. From there, we went to Colombia to Peru, Peru to Costa Rica. So those are the 5 countries we went to on this trip. And we went to a couple places, at least a couple places in each country, except for Costa Rica. We only went to one area there.
Yeah, we had already been to Mexico before, but we had a couple of events in Mexico that we needed to kind of work into this trip. For one, we went to Puerto Vallarta for a week, which is on the coast. We've been there before. It's a really beautiful beach area, but my mom wanted to go there, and so we just kind of went on a week-long vacation as part of the trip with her. And then we also had the Core Medical Group sponsored trip, which is a trip that one of the staffing companies, Core Medical Group, has for travel healthcare providers that work for them. So that we worked into the trip too. That was in Cancun, so that was obviously just like fun vacation, all-inclusive. We'd been to those places before, but we just kind of, it fit into the time frame that we were going to be gone, so we made some stops in Mexico. In addition to that, we also went to Mexico City, and we had never been to Mexico City before.
Yeah, we heard great things about Mexico City. We were very excited about going there and checking that out. And it also made sense coming from Puerto Vallarta to stop in Mexico City because it was kind of on the way to Guatemala. And actually, some of the flights were cheaper to go from Puerto Vallarta to Mexico City, stay there for a couple days, and then go from Mexico City to Guatemala. Unfortunately, though, we got COVID while we were in Mexico City, so we ended up having to stay there. We were planning to stay for like 5 days. We stayed for about almost 2 weeks, so that threw a wrench in our plans a little bit. Luckily, we had a relatively mild case of COVID. It wasn't a big deal, but it made us stay there longer. We had to quarantine for a week there, so that changed our plans completely, and we had planned to spend 2 weeks in Costa Rica, ended up only being 1, but things happen.
Yeah, we did a whole video kind of talking about that first part of the trip and our experience getting COVID, so you guys can go back a couple videos ago if you want to learn more about that. But that was definitely one of the big hurdles and big setbacks of our trip, was getting COVID in a foreign country. That was not a fun time, and that happened within the first 2 weeks of our trip, so it was kind of a rocky start from the beginning. In addition to that, yeah, just kind of having to rearrange our plans really tainted our experience in Costa Rica, because we ended up just sort of tacking Costa Rica on at the end. It wasn't even a full week, it was like 6 days. And so unfortunately, by the time we got to Costa Rica, we were just kind of over it, to be honest. And I don't think we really enjoyed Costa Rica as much as we would have otherwise, because obviously so many people go to Costa Rica and say it's just absolutely incredible. And we really only spent a few days there, and the first day of it was traveling, because it's like a long shuttle ride from the airport, and the last day of it was traveling, and then in between there we had to get a COVID test to come back to the US. So I don't think we had the most ideal experience on the Costa Rica part of the trip. So that was another setback, I would say. Yeah,
and originally we planned to go from Mexico straight to Costa Rica, and then once we got COVID, we had to change our flights, and it was kind of a last-minute thing. And then the flights didn't line up well to make it to Costa Rica before having to go back to Mexico for the Core Medical trip. So then we ended up changing everything around, going to Guatemala, and so this was definitely the trip we had the most issue with planning things. Like our trip in 2018, 5 months in Asia and Europe, and 2019 in Europe went really well. Like, we kind of planned it out and we stuck almost completely to that itinerary, but this time things, we weren't booking it as far in advance just because we knew that, it's always a chance that we'll get COVID or something will happen with restrictions.
Yeah, because restrictions can change, and that's another hurdle you have to think about if you set out to go on a trip. And I mean, gosh, just getting COVID while you're traveling, if you have to quarantine for a week or two, what if you only have a trip like a normal person who takes a vacation for a week or two? That could really ruin your plans. So right now is definitely a more challenging time to travel. Once you get to places, it feels relatively normal. Like, obviously certain places you have to show your vaccine card or there's mask mandates, but for the most part, like, it feels pretty normal, but you have to always just kind of worry, am I going to be able to get from A to B? And it definitely makes it harder to hop around, especially go to different countries.
Yeah. Traveling during COVID has added an extra layer of complexity, which there was already some complexity to traveling internationally anyway, just because each country has their different requirements and things. But now with COVID, some places require a test before. Sometimes it's antigen, sometimes it's PCR. Sometimes it has to be within 24 hours, 72 hours. So each place you go to, it's a little more difficult now. And that also adds to the, if you're doing a long trip, it wears on you having to check where you're going, make sure you meet all the requirements. And then we had a couple situations where we'd get to the airport and we were supposed to download some app for that country, but we weren't prepared for that. And one in particular was a nightmare to try to download this app in the airport and fill out the required information. So little things like that are much harder now than they used to be on our prior trips.
Yeah. And this was our first experience traveling around the regions of Central and South America. Previously, we've traveled all over the U.S. We've been to Canada, the Caribbean. We've been to parts of Southeast Asia and Europe. And we really found that it's actually kind of challenging to country hop or go from one place to another in Central and South America. A lot more challenging than Europe, for example, or Asia even. We went to a ton, like in 2019, we went to Europe and we went to like 15 countries. And it's so easy to get around there. You can take trains really easy, flights really easy, really cheap. It's really not that way in Central and South America. The flights are very expensive, more like U.S. prices. You're going to pay more like $200, $300, $400.
And even more in some cases.
And then in addition to that, some of the smaller countries, especially in Central America, the roads aren't very good. So you can't just easily get from one city to another. Like when we went to Guatemala, it was like 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 hour bus rides to get to places or shuttles. And if you want to pay for like a private taxi, it's super expensive. Same thing with Costa Rica. That's why we ended up only going to one city in Costa Rica when we realized we had 5 or 6 days, because to us with 5 or 6 days, it wasn't worth it to spend half of 2, 3, 4 days of that in the car, driving on bumpy, windy roads to get from A to B. We were like, let's just get to one place and stay there.
Yeah. That we also ran into this when we were planning our 2020 trip. So we had most of that trip planned. I'd looked up flights for almost everywhere we were going, and I noticed back then that the flights are much harder to arrange and much more expensive than in Asia or Europe or even in North America. And I guess just there's less options. And then after COVID, it was even harder to plan those flights and even more expensive. So that was probably the hardest part of this trip, was coordinating everything, getting to each place, and then coordinating like shuttles and transportation from the airport to wherever we were going. That made this trip significantly harder than any of our trips in the past.
Yeah. On top of on top of getting COVID, I also just felt like we were both kind of sick off and on this whole trip, and that sort of tainted our experience a little bit. We've definitely dealt with like food-related illness traveling in, even in Europe, but definitely in Asia, in Mexico. You know, it happens sometimes with food or with the water, but it happened so much more this trip, and we just felt like we couldn't go like a week before we had some kind of new stomach problem or a sniffle or just something. And then when we were in Peru in particular, in Cusco, which is where Machu Picchu is, and we'll talk more about this, but just talking about some of the struggles, I guess, in this category. It's high altitude there. And so we'd heard about people struggling with altitude sickness, and we didn't feel like we necessarily had like your classic altitude sickness symptoms, headaches and like nausea or anything like that. But we definitely just didn't sleep well, and we felt like we were always tired. And We felt like the air was dry and our skin was dry, and we were getting bloody noses and just like cold sniffle symptoms and all this stuff. And I just felt like we were unwell during part of the Peru trip.
Yeah, and who knows? It could have been like lingering effects from COVID or something like that. But it definitely felt we didn't feel as like vibrant as we have on prior trips.
Yeah, so there were definitely lots of like health struggles on this trip where we just didn't feel 100%.
Yeah.
In addition to that, you're traveling in countries that unfortunately they don't have safe drinking water. So every single day you're having to worry about making sure you get enough clean drinking water, and we were moving each week, so it wasn't as easy to maybe get like a large water cooler that we could refill or anything like that. So we basically just, every place we went, we're getting bottles and bottles of water.
Like 2 liter, 3 liter, 4 liter bottles of water, but every day getting multiple bottles of water. So that adds some extra hassle trying to go to like grocery stores every single day to get water, because you can only carry so many big bottles of water back to your place every day.
And you feel like you're being really wasteful because you're using so many plastic bottles, and you feel like you're not hydrating enough because maybe it's the end of the night and you didn't get quite enough water and you have to wait until the morning to get water again. So it was interesting. It was definitely an interesting trip with lots of ups and downs, I would say.
Yeah.
But yeah, we want to talk about some more of the specific places that we went, the places that we would recommend for other people to travel to, what were our favorites, and what were some of the activities that we did. If you guys have any questions, if you want to leave them in the comments, we'll answer any questions that you have. If you are enjoying watching this video and you're learning anything, we'd love if you'd hit the thumbs up button. And again, let us know if it looks normal, because our screen is still
We're still sideways on our screen, so it looks very strange to us.
Yeah, so let us know. Okay, so some of the highlights, we got to see a lot of people that we knew on certain parts of the trip. So we got to see a lot of people at CSM in Texas at the beginning of the trip, and then a few weeks into the trip we went to that core medical group trip in Mexico, and we got to see a lot of fellow travel PTs, nurses, friends. That was really cool.
Yeah, CSM was a lot of fun. We met a bunch of followers and had a meetup there, and had a lot of fun just both at the conference and after the conference doing things. So that was the highlight of the trip for sure, and that was a really good way to start the trip, seeing so many people. And also we got recommendations from a lot of the people that we met up with for the trip. So we told them, we're going to Colombia or Peru or whatever, and they would tell us some of their favorite places if they'd been there.
Yep. Mexico was fun in terms of like Puerto Vallarta, beautiful. Mexico City wasn't really our favorite. A lot of people really like big cities. We're not super like into big cities. So on top of that, we got COVID, so we didn't actually do that much while we were in Mexico City. So I wouldn't say that was one of our favorite places. Next, we went to Guatemala. Loved Guatemala. It was very beautiful. The people were so kind. We went to 3 places there. We went to Antigua, Lake Atitlan, and Flores, which is the town adjacent to the Tikal ruins. Tikal is it Mayan ruins?
Yeah, I think so.
Mayan. We got to see a lot of history on this trip, a lot of Mayan and Incan history. We also felt like in Guatemala, especially in like the small villages near Lake Atitlan, that we felt more connected to the locals and the community. That was just really, really wonderful. I would say of Guatemala, the 3 places that we went, we just absolutely loved Lake Atitlan. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was very beautiful. It was a little touristy. I can only imagine what it was like 20 or 30 years ago. I bet it was amazing. It's a little touristy now, so it's a little more expensive than other places in Guatemala, but the lake is beautiful there, and that was probably one of the top 2 or 3 places we visited on this trip. We really enjoyed going all over that lake, and the water's beautiful. The volcanoes in the backgrounds are amazing. It was awesome.
Yeah, one thing we regret that we did not get the opportunity to do when we were in Guatemala, we had heard about this hike that you can do near Antigua, where you hike up a mountain, a volcano actually, and you're across from an active volcano called Volcan Fuego. And we heard it was really amazing. You stay overnight, you can see the active volcano really nearby erupting. Unfortunately, this was right after we had COVID, and for one, we weren't feeling physically up to doing that challenging hike, and for 2, we had our Guatemala time cut into a little bit because of staying over in Mexico, so we just didn't really have the time to fit in that hike, but we heard really good things about it.
Yeah, everyone we talked to that did that hike said that was the best part of Guatemala. So anyone planning a trip to Guatemala, I would do that hike, and if we ever go back to Antigua, we will definitely do that hike as well.
Yeah, but absolutely recommend Lake Atitlan. We stayed in I think it was San Juan, the village that we stayed in. A lot of people stay in San Pedro, I think is the one, or is it Pablo? It's Pedro. San Pedro is like the popular backpacker one, but really just very relaxing and peaceful there at the lake. So we had a great time in Guatemala. Definitely recommend.
So from Guatemala to the Core Med trip, from there we went to Colombia. And we'd heard a lot of great things about Colombia. Colombia was very different. It was our first time ever in South America, actually in South America. And very different. Some of the cities there are, well, at least Medellin. We didn't go to Bogota. Bogota is the capital, but we heard Bogota is even more of like just a metropolis, kind of like New York City or something like that. Medellin has a lot more charm, I guess. There's a lot of little small areas around there, and it was a very cool place. It wasn't one of our favorite places. I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that we're not real big city people. We much prefer things like Atitlan, where it's very small and very rural, laid back. So Medellin wasn't our favorite place, but it is still a really cool place to see. They had like it's very mountainous there, and at night seeing the lights on the mountains in the distance is really beautiful. And some of the little neighborhoods there basically have like almost like houses built on top of each other, and it reminds me of like something I've seen in Brazil or something like that. So very unique place.
Yeah, Medellin is in this big valley surrounded by the mountains, and some of the villages or parts of the town, I guess, communities, if you call them, they have to actually use cable cars to go up the mountain to get to their house. And even from there, they might have to still walk up hundreds of stairs to get to their houses. So it was definitely a very unique city. I don't think I'll ever forget the way that Medellin was laid out. It was very beautiful, and it was really cool just to feel the culture and the vibe of like the different communities. So we had a good time, but I wouldn't say it was like our top favorite place that we've ever been. But there is some nature in that area. I know you can take day trips out of there to go places. We did take a day trip to go to a cute little place called Guatape, which has a big man-made lake, and it's just stunning. So we really enjoyed that day trip.
Yeah, and there's probably, we only spent, I guess, like a week there, right? If you spent more time than that and you had time to go like out of the area and hike up some of the mountains, I'm sure all the surrounding area is beautiful. Like it's already pretty high elevation, and the weather's more moderate there year round, which is very nice. And it would be a great place to go hike in some of the mountains. You have to be careful in some of the areas, but if we had done more of that, we probably would have enjoyed it more. Yeah,
and there's definitely, you can feel the cultural vibe in Colombia. They're very party people. They love music. They love dancing. So that part of it was fun and entertaining. We actually never went out to any of the bars or any of the dance clubs. We were staying right next to an entire street of Roomba dance clubs, and we never went to any of them. Maybe we should have done that.
But we could hear them even on weekdays at like 4 a.m. still going strong. So sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, so Colombia's a cool place. Again, it wasn't necessarily our favorite, but it was fun. And so from Medellin, we went to a smaller city called Cartagena, which is on the coast. So it's actually more of a Caribbean vibe. It's in Colombia, but it's on the north coast of Colombia. So it kind of felt like we were in a Caribbean town in a way. And that also had just really vibrant culture, dancing, music, street art, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, and there's a walled city there, very old, and so there's a lot of history there as well. It was a cool place to be. It was a lot hotter than Medellin. It's lower down by the sea, so it's a lot hotter. That was a downside for us. Luckily, we found a place that had AC, but that was still a really cool place to see. Very different. It's amazing how different. It's like the U.S. Like if you're in Texas, how different is Texas than like New York City? Like there couldn't be any more different, right? And there's a lot of other countries that it's the same thing. If you might travel 200 miles, but it feels like a different country. It's a very different feel, and that's kind of how Medellin was to Cartagena.
Yeah, and again, Cartagena was pretty touristy. We saw tons of tourists there, backpackers. It was a fun place to be we stayed like a week, which we probably didn't need a whole week there. I bet you could do most things and get the vibe of it in 4 to 5 days.
Yeah.
But it was cool. Again, I don't think Colombia was like our top country that we personally liked that much, but we had a good time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So from Colombia, we went to Peru, which we were honestly the most excited about. And maybe we had just hyped it up so much in our minds that we knew already we were going to love it. And we did. We absolutely loved Peru.
Well, so Whitney says that I was most excited about Colombia on this trip. I thought,
Really?
I heard a lot of good things, and I thought Colombia was going to be very underrated by most people. And yeah, Peru actually I thought was significantly, I enjoyed it much more than Colombia. And I wasn't expecting that. So I doubt it was the hype more so than it was more like the city, like at least Lima. It was very modern. It was a very modern city, beautiful, right on the coast. A lot of things to do there. And then when we went to Cusco, that was just a very different world. Like you're high altitude, and it's still a fairly big city. Nothing like Lima, but still a lot to see. And all the surrounding area is just beautiful. Old Incan areas. Machu Picchu is amazing, but also there's a ton of other areas all around Cusco that are also beautiful, beautiful places. And then they also have mountains that are like 23,000 feet high. In the distance you can see with snow and glaciers on them, and that was just something that we didn't really realize that would be the case there. You know, at least we think of like really high mountains in like Argentina and places like that, but we didn't think about that around Cusco.
So we spent a week in Lima and then a week in Cusco. In Lima is a big city, and it does have lots of different types of neighborhoods. We stayed in Miraflores is a popular like expat, more international, more touristy district, but not tourist. Yeah, we were right between Miraflores and Barranco, which both of those areas we felt were very nice. We enjoyed it. They were touristy in some ways, like more people spoke English, and you saw a variety of people from all different countries and races and cultures and everything. But also it wasn't touristy where they're like constantly trying to sell you things or bother you.
Yeah.
More
metropolitan.
We felt more like we were just kind of blend in with the locals there. The real highlight in Lima, one, I think the coastline was just gorgeous. It reminded me of being in like California or something. It just had this beautiful cliffs and palm trees and just beautiful sunsets on the west coast. But the big highlight in Lima is the food. And we have a friend who's from Lima, and she told us a little bit about how Lima is one of the top culinary destinations in the world. They've been rated that many times on magazines that do like tourism ratings, and there are tons of really highly rated chefs and restaurants there. But we were able to even find just delicious food at just your neighborhood corner restaurant and food stands and things like that. So we definitely had some good foodie experiences in Lima, and I just loved the Peruvian food. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, Peruvian food is one of our favorite types of food. It's up there with like Mexican and Japanese for us, and it definitely didn't disappoint. So Lima is an amazing place to go for the cultural and the culinary experience.
Yeah, and in the central part of Lima, like the historic district, they also had some really pretty architecture. We enjoyed doing a tour there. We really liked it. It was kind of reminded me of like being in Spain, or more that like Spanish European architecture. Really beautiful. So from there we went to Cusco, and I would say Cusco was my favorite place of the whole trip. We had some ups and downs in Cusco in terms of, like I said, we didn't like feel super great. We didn't get a lot of sleep because we did a lot of tours in Cusco where we were leaving in the middle of the night and that sort of thing. But we had so many cool experiences. We went to some really gorgeous mountains. We went to Machu Picchu, went to Rainbow Mountain, the Sacred Valley. So Cusco is definitely my favorite place of the whole trip.
Yeah, I think it was my favorite place as well. The altitude, that was a surprise because we've done some fairly high altitude hiking, over 13,000 feet. I never felt like I ever had any issues with altitude, even like feeling out of breath or tired or anything like that. But Cusco is almost 12,000 feet, just the basic part of Cusco, like not even the mountains surrounding it. And it's kind of like a valley. It's kind of down at 12,000 feet. And so I didn't think much about the altitude. I didn't think it'd be an issue, but I had a lot of trouble sleeping there. There was like 2 nights where I maybe slept like an hour, and I'd fall asleep and then just wake up in 30 minutes, and then I couldn't go back to sleep. It was very strange. And I don't know what to attribute that to except for altitude, because I've never had any issues like that before. So that was a strange experience we had there. And then add in not being able to sleep well with early morning tours that we're not used to, and We were very tired for most of that part of the trip, but it was that was probably still the best part of the trip, even despite not feeling the best.
And we could just never breathe. We were staying on like the 3rd or 4th floor of our building. There's no elevator. So every day you're just walking up these stairs, or you're just walking from one side of the apartment to the other, and you're like, I can't breathe.
Yeah.
And much less like going on hikes and stuff where you're going up tons of stairs and mountains. It just felt like we couldn't breathe the whole time we were there.
It was a really odd experience. Like we hiked some hard hikes at high altitude in Hawaii, and I felt like that was no issue at all. And then to go up a couple flights of stairs and be out of breath was really strange. So I don't know if we were just very out of shape or if it was the altitude or combination.
I don't know. Even the people who like worked in the building, the host at the Airbnb, she would come up to the 3rd floor to like come to our apartment to meet us, and she would be out of breath. The 4th floor. She would be out of breath, and she lives there, and she probably grew up there.
Yeah.
So anyway, but it was amazing. So in Cusco, our friend recommended that we go through a tour group to plan a lot of our activities for us, which we had never really done it that way before.
We've never done that.
We usually book everything all on our own. We usually, like, if we're going to do a tour, we just book that one tour for that one day by ourselves through an agency. But we had kind of a contact who was in contact with us the whole time, being like, okay, today they'll pick you up at this time and you'll have this tour, and tomorrow they'll pick you up at this time and have this tour. And there were pros and cons to that. It was interesting. I don't know if we would have planned it that way again, but we ended up doing a bunch of tours we didn't even know about. And
Yeah.
I'm glad, because they took us to what's called the Sacred Valley, which we'd never heard of before, and it was just stunning. Just some of the most beautiful views we've ever seen.
Yeah, definitely pros and cons. It was very expensive, much more expensive than pretty much anything we've ever done out of the country. And we've traveled internationally for over a year now total. So that was a downside. I would say that if we had gone there and not done any sort of tour guide or tour company, we would have just gone to Machu Picchu and Rainbow Mountain. That's what we knew about, that everyone we know have gone to those places. And so Sacred Valley we would have completely missed. And that was something that this tour guide set up for us. And there was another tour that she set up for us, just visiting places in Cusco. We would have not done those two. The one around Cusco, not the best. I probably would have skipped that if I could do it again.
I mean, it was amazing, but
it was amazing, but compared to other things, we could have skipped it. And but Sacred Valley was something that, now knowing how amazing it was, I would have really not wanted to miss that, and we probably would have missed that.
But you don't need to have a tour guide book all that for you. So just go to Sacred Valley, book a tour yourself for the day. But what was interesting, so because we had this person who was organizing everything for us and texting us about like the pickup times and stuff like that, what happened to us when we were planning to go to Machu Picchu? Apparently there were some protests and strikes going on in Peru. Apparently it was going on in Lima, but we didn't see it at all when we were in Lima, so I don't know if it wasn't going on yet, or
I think it was going on all over the country.
Or if it was just in different districts that we were not in Lima, because we encountered no problems in Lima, but we also weren't constantly in contact with someone who maybe, has their ear to the ground and could have told us about it. We were just, we're just tourists, I don't know, we'll just do our thing. Whereas, like, in Cusco, that's how it felt too. Like, we were just like, we're tourists. I don't see any protests. Do you? But apparently on the outskirts of the city and stuff, things were happening. So our tour guide was super worried, because Cusco is in this valley and you have to leave and exit via, a certain road to get out of the valley to get to other places like Machu Picchu. So they were super concerned that the protests and the strikes were going to affect our route to get out of the city the morning that we need to go to Machu Picchu.
Yeah, and these protests and things are set up ahead of time, and it's only on certain days. And it just so happened the day that we needed to go to Machu Picchu, that was the first day of a protest or a blockade that they were planning on doing. It seems to be mostly transport related professions that are striking. And what they do as part of these protests regularly is they will block the road out of Cusco. So we didn't know what to do. If we didn't have someone else that, had some insight and was telling us what to do, we might have been in a really bad position. So, who knows, maybe it was a blessing in disguise that we booked through this agency and we had a local person like communicating with us and telling us what was going on. But it did cause some issues, because we had to basically leave about 5 hours before when we thought we needed to leave, and that was already very early. So that was a major hassle.
We told this story on our Instagram, but we'll tell it again real quick. So basically, normally to get to Machu Picchu, you have to drive about 2 hours out of Cusco to get to a train station in a town, I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's called
Ollantaytambo.
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 It's Ollantaytambo. Ollantaytambo. Anyway, so once you get there via bus or taxi, 2-hour drive-ish, then you get on a train in the O town, and then you take a train for like 2 hours to Aguas Calientes. And then once you're in Aguas Calientes, that's basically like you're already at Machu Picchu, but then you have to take like a short 20-minute bus ride up the hill to get to Machu Picchu. So some people will just stay the night either in the O town or in Aguas Calientes the night before, so that way you can just get to Machu Picchu really early. But if you want to do it as a day trip, go and come back in the same day, you got to leave at like 4 a.m. basically from Machu Picchu to make it there. And we were like, well, 4 a.m. is early.
From Cusco to make it.
From Cusco to make it there. 4 a.m. is early, but whatever, it's fine. Well, what ended up happening is they were concerned that 4 a.m. wasn't going to work because they were afraid that they might block the road, the protesters, at midnight. And so they suggested that we leave the day before, but they didn't really, it was kind of all through text message like the day before. And we were like, nah, that sounds like a lot of hassle. We don't want to go stay somewhere when we already have our Airbnb in Cusco. And they didn't really make it sound that urgent. They were just like, you could do it this way or whatever. And so we were like, well, we don't really know about that. So they were like, okay, it's fine. We'll pick you up at 2 a.m. just to be safe, to allow some extra time in case we run into a roadblock and we need to go around it or something. So we were like, okay, 2 a.m. I guess we're leaving at 2 a.m. So we go to bed at like 9, 10 p.m. At 11 p.m., I wake up to a phone call and they were like urgent, like you need to go now. They're coming to pick you up now. They're going to go before midnight so that you can get through. And of course, like we don't speak very good Spanish and they don't speak very good English. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like it's 11 p.m. We can't go now. Our tickets aren't at Machu Picchu till 9 a.m.
We've been sleeping for 45 minutes.
So it was a nightmare. It was a mess. And so we end up, hurry up, get ready, the bus comes and picks us up, and there were already a ton of other tourists on the bus. So apparently a bunch of the tour guides got together and were like, we're just going to do it this way to make sure the tourists get to Machu Picchu. So they picked everybody up at like 11:30 at night and took us to Ollantaytambo. We arrive at Ollantaytambo at 1:30 in the morning. The whole town's asleep. The trains don't leave till 5 or 6 or 7 a.m. So we ended up, there was just, I guess maybe they told the local people that some tourists were going to be bussed in at 1 a.m. So there happened to be some people out on the sidewalks. And so we asked one of them if there was a hostel that we could just stay in for a few hours to take a nap. So we ended up paying like $16 to sleep for 3 hours in a hostel, just in our clothes that we were going to go to Machu Picchu in that day. So we had a nap for 3 hours.
Yeah, it wasn't ideal. Had we known how urgent it was, we could have just stayed there the day before. It would have been fine. The big downside we thought was we're going to have our bags. Like if we were going to stay somewhere overnight, we need to pack our bags. And then what are we going to take our bags to Machu Picchu? It doesn't make sense. But knowing what we know now, it would have been much better to just take like a very small bag, or just take the clothes we were going to wear those same clothes for the next day, and stay in that town and catch the train early.
It would have saved us a lot of stress.
Would have saved us a lot of
hassle.
Well,
and also what we didn't realize too is like it's apparently pretty common to just do the one night overnight in one of those small towns before going to Machu Picchu. And so apparently a lot of the hostels and hotels will just keep your bags for you because you have to come back there anyway on the train, so they can keep the bags for you at the desk, or even at the train station they have lockers that you can rent for the day to store your luggage. So we didn't realize, because there was just this language barrier with our tour guide, we didn't realize the urgency, and if we had, we would have rearranged our plans. So I don't know. I'm not really sure if it was a good thing or a bad thing that we had this tour person intervening on our behalf, but it is what it is. We made it to Machu Picchu. It was stressful and we only got a little bit of sleep, but Machu Picchu was incredible.
It was incredible, and the day was salvaged. At least we got a little bit of a nap in before we caught the train, and we got very lucky. It was raining on the train ride, and then it was raining as we walked up to like the main part of Machu Picchu. But then right when we got to the top, the clouds cleared and we got beautiful pictures and amazing views. So, everything worked out, and we're very happy that we went, and glad we didn't miss out based on, if we had stayed till 4 and then we couldn't get through the road, then that, we could have missed our chance to go. So I'm glad we did it the way we did it, and it all worked out well.
Yeah, because you have to have your Machu Picchu tickets pretty far in advance and your train tickets. And so there's a chance that if we had missed it, we wouldn't have been able to reschedule it within that week time frame that we had. So we're really glad it worked out.
Yeah, and actually the train tickets are more expensive than the entry into Machu Picchu, like significantly more expensive. I think it's like 3 times as much or maybe 4 times as much.
And you can only either get there by train or by hiking the
Yeah.
Inca Trail for 4 days. So, I mean, you
Yeah.
have to pretty much.
Yeah, so they have a monopoly on the means of transportation to Machu Picchu, and they take advantage of that, and they charge a ton of money. So, and not only do they charge a ton, the train's always full, so they're able to charge a ton.
Yeah. But either way, hopefully you guys will get an opportunity at some point to go to Peru. It's definitely one of our maybe top 5 countries that we've
Yeah.
ever been to. I mean, from everything from the food to the people to the architecture to the natural beauty of the mountains. And of course, we only went to the Cusco region and to Lima. There's also a lot of other really beautiful places we heard about in the country of Peru. So I don't think this will be the last time that we ever go to Peru. It's definitely somewhere I could see visiting again in terms of just like, it wasn't too difficult culturally. Obviously, it helps if you speak some Spanish, but a lot of people speak some English too. The food was something I could eat all the time. And obviously in the bigger cities and in the more tourist places, you don't have to just eat Peruvian food. You have variety as well.
Yeah, it's really hard to rank countries, but of the 35 countries we've been to, I would put Peru as like number 4. So it's a great place to go and see. Machu Picchu is amazing. Sacred Valley was awesome. We didn't even talk about Rainbow Mountain, but Rainbow Mountain was a really cool place to see as well. And it was also the highest elevation we'd ever been to. It's like up near 16,000 feet. So that was an experience in itself.
Yep, for sure. So absolutely great time in Peru. So after Peru, because our like week in Cusco was so jam-packed with tours and not sleeping well and all that stuff, and at this point we were over 2 months into our trip, it almost felt like our last stop. We went from Peru back to Costa Rica. It almost felt like it was just an afterthought, like I mentioned, because we had to cancel the Costa Rica part earlier in the trip, and it almost felt like we were just sort of tacking it on at the end as a means to like ease our transition from South America back to Central, back to the U.S. So I don't feel like we did Costa Rica justice.
Yeah, and honestly, the highlight of the trip was Machu Picchu. We knew that. We wanted to go there. It's one of the wonders of the world. It was amazing. So after seeing that and all the kind of the hassle we went through in Cusco and getting there and all that, Costa Rica was amazing. It's a beautiful country. We did some tours there that we really enjoyed, but it was. I wish we had fresh eyes to look at it with, and not like a fatigued, ready to go home kind of demeanor.
Yeah, because I feel like by the time we got to Costa Rica, we were just sort of ready to come home. But either way, in Costa Rica, you fly into the capital, which is San Juan. And then from there, you use that as a jumping off point to get to a lot of different places. What a lot of people go to Costa Rica for is the beaches. We actually chose not to go to the beaches. If you guys have been following us for a while, you know that in early 2021, we spent 2 whole months just in the beaches of Mexico. So we feel like we've had a lot of beach time. This time we wanted to do more history, more culture, more mountains. So we chose to go to the town of La Fortuna, which is about a 3-hour taxi drive from San Juan. So we drove from San Juan.
It's San Jose.
Oh, is it San Jose?
Yeah.
Sorry, San Juan is the place that we stayed in
Rico.
Guatemala. Well, and Puerto Rico. There's a lot of
San Jose's and San Juans.
San J's. Anyway, San Jose, Costa Rica. Then you drive 3 hours to La Fortuna. And La Fortuna is the town that's at the base of the volcano there. Arenal. And there's a lake to a Lake Arenal. So we did some really fun day trips. Or actually, we just did 1-day trip that combined a lot of activities. We went to the La Fortuna waterfall, which was gorgeous. It looked just like one of the ones we saw in Hawaii. It was stunning. We went to a hike at the volcano, and the volcano was really cool to see. It's sort of active, but it's not like actively erupting now.
Yeah, it's not. The last that was actually active was like 2010. Mm-hmm. It's not like the one in Guatemala where it's like you can actually see at night. You can see in the distance it glowing, and you can see lava shooting out if you look very carefully.
It's not like that.
It's not like that.
But technically it could still erupt at any time, but it's not erupting right now. But still, it was really cool to hike near there. It's rainforest there, very tropical environment. So we saw the waterfall, we saw the volcano, we saw the lake. We went to a place called the Hanging Bridges Park, where they have put all these suspension hanging bridges in the rainforest. And so you're hiking through the rainforest, and then you go across these long bridges, and you're looking way down.
Some of them are like 150 feet off the ground. So that was cool. We saw a bunch of awesome birds there because, this is like the rainforest. There's tons of snakes and birds. And
monkeys.
We saw, howler monkeys up in the trees. That was a cool place to see.
Yeah, and then we ended that day tour at the hot springs, which is actually the most unique hot springs we've ever been to. So a lot of times when we've been to hot springs, they just have like a water chute that's coming out of the mountain, and then they create a pool for it to come into, and then you're kind of in like a hot tub type of thing. This was an actual entire river that is a hot river coming down off the volcano. And so it was the weirdest thing, because usually if you're at a creek bed or a river bed and you go take your shoes off and walk into it, you expect it to be like cold. It was warm, it was hot, like a jacuzzi.
Yeah, probably about, I would say like 98 to 100 degrees. It's pretty warm. Yeah, it's very odd because the water's running just like a normal river would be. It's kind of shallow, maybe 1 or 2 feet at the deepest, the part we were at least, but all the water's warm. So that was a strange thing.
Yeah, so that was really cool and a cool way to end our day tour. So like I said, we were kind of tired when we were in Costa Rica, so we knew going there that there were about 4 different activities we wanted to do, so we ended up just booking a day tour that hit all the highlights. If I were you, I would probably just only do a tour. If we could do it again, we probably would have only done like the hike and the hanging bridges with a tour guide.
Yeah.
And we would have just gone to the waterfall and the hot springs by ourselves at a different time, because then you could have relaxed more.
The waterfall and the hanging bridges are, the waterfall and the hot river are not hard to get to on your own. So it's easy to do that without a tour guide. And it was nice to have that all like planned for us and just get it all in one day, all the things we want to see around there. But yeah, it would have been better to do just those 2 and then do the waterfall and the hot river on your own, and have a little more time at each place, because the waterfall you can swim and the hot river you can just relax in there. So we felt a little bit rushed since it was an all-day tour and we had to go from place to place. So not ideal, but it was still great.
Yeah, but the town of La Fortuna was really cute. It's definitely touristy, but we had some good food there, and felt a little bit of the cultural vibe. The Pura Vida is the big vibe there in Costa Rica. So we definitely in the future will have to give Costa Rica another chance. Go see some of the gorgeous beaches that people talk about, and give it a little more of its own like highlight instead of it being kind of at the end of a trip for us.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's still a lot of places we want to see in Central and South America. Hopefully we'll be able to go back sometime in the next year. There's at least 5 or 6 more countries we really want to go to. We've heard a lot of good things about, so hopefully we can go back there soon. But this trip was still a really good trip, even though health-wise we weren't in the best shape, and conditioning-wise we weren't in the best shape after getting COVID. So things didn't go perfectly, but travel never goes perfectly. Yeah. You just kind of have to roll with the punches as they come and adjust your plans accordingly. And that's how it always is.
Yeah, but I also feel like part of us is like we're getting older a little bit, and we're getting more ready to settle down after having traveled so much. So, after being gone for 3 months, we were like, oh, we can't wait to just go home and be in our own house and our own bed and all that. But I think part of that's just the fatigue of being gone for 3 months and moving so often. So we're glad to be home for a bit, but we actually won't be here long. So we haven't made a public announcement about this yet, but we'll go ahead and talk about it here, and then
before we get into that,
say more.
So soon. I know probably a lot of you guys, before we graduated and even right after we graduated, I really idealized international travel and like digital nomad. Like that was a thing back in 2015, 2016. I think it still is. People talk about that. And I thought like, oh, we'll live outside the country. It'll be amazing. I guess it probably depends on the person, but I think long-term travel, like not having a home base, traveling forever, even though that sounds like a romantic idea, it is not for us. And I think most people will figure that out if you travel for a while. It's really exhausting going from place to place to place to place. If you go for a 1 or 2 week trip, like I said, it's amazing because you're excited the whole time, and then by the time you come back, you're not ready to leave. But if you go on like a 3, 4, 5 month trip, at least in our experience, by the end of it, we're ready to be home. So digital nomads, people that want to go that route, I think it's something that you should try, but it's certainly not for everyone. I think it's probably a small percentage of people that can really just travel indefinitely and just move all around. I think most people miss some sort of routine and being in the same place.
Yeah, and I think if you were going to do that, I think it's more realistic to do what people call slow travel, where you would spend at least a month, if not 3 months or 6 months in the same place. And then you can establish a routine there. Just like with travel healthcare, when you go and you move to a new city in the U.S. and you work at the same clinic or the same hospital for at least 3 months, if not 6 or 9 months, you establish a whole new routine there. You've got your grocery store and your gym and your community there, and you're going to work and you're doing a routine. And you could certainly do that as a digital nomad if you pick a country and stay there for several months. So I think that's definitely a reality for a lot of people, but we wouldn't necessarily recommend moving often. It's very exhausting.
Yep.
But we still had a great time. And I think it's obviously an extreme privilege. We're very fortunate to be able to go to all these places and experience these cultures, and you learn things from people, and you get to practice another language and learn about another culture. But then another part of it is that it makes you appreciate what you have. It makes you appreciate what we have in the U.S. and appreciate some of the small things that we might take for granted here.
Yeah, like being able to drink water out of the tap whenever you want. Like that is something that when you travel for a while and you have to get bottled water all the time and you can't trust the local water, that is something that you really miss.
Yeah, and even things just like the luxuries that we have, like supermarkets. Some people might argue that the way that they do it in smaller towns and smaller villages is a better way, having like a fresh produce and fresh meat market where you have to go and get the different things. But also I think it's a huge convenience to have what we call here supermarkets, where you just go to one building and they have everything you need there, and tons of variety, obviously.
Yeah.
Compared to other countries, you might be limited to just what there is locally.
Yep. So our next adventure, while we were in Cusco, we interviewed for jobs. I think we mentioned before, maybe last video or sometime, that we were working on our Alaska licenses. Mm-hmm. And we really wanted to go to Alaska this summer because we've never been to Alaska. It's the only state we haven't been to. So we interviewed in Cusco. We found a clinic that we think will work well for us. We accepted contracts there. We're still trying to get everything finalized, like all the pre-employment paperwork and all that. Still trying to find somewhere to live. So if you have any ideas on somewhere that might be available short-term in Alaska starting like mid-May, that would be awesome. We're all ears. But hopefully that will work out, and we should be there for the summer.
Yeah, we're really excited.
Anchorage, by the way.
Yeah, we're going to Anchorage. Yeah. So Alaska is the only state that we have not been to. We've been to all 49 states except for Alaska. And in terms of being travel therapists, there's a lot of places in the U.S. that people really want to go and things they really want to do. We never made it out west in the U.S. We only ever took contracts in the continental U.S. on the East Coast. So I do think that, part of us, we kind of wanted to go out west and it just never quite worked out. But I would say that two of our top things that we always kind of in the back of our minds knew we wanted to do were make it to Hawaii and make it to Alaska. And so it's finally happening. Last summer we went to Hawaii for a contract, and this summer we're going to make it to Alaska. Now that we are kind of semi-retired and we also have our online business, we don't work full-time in the clinic anymore. So we were really fortunate that we were able to find a clinic that is willing to let us work part-time. So right now the plan is that I'm going to work 3 days a week and Jared's going to work 2 days a week at these outpatient clinics. So once we have all the details more finalized, get our housing in place and all that, we are going to do a full video talking about the logistics of Alaska, because it's a very unique place to go in terms of finding housing and a car and getting there, traveling there. We're planning to drive. We'll tell you all about it. And yeah, we just can't wait to share with you guys this summer what it's going to be like to be in Alaska.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. We make these videos and we talk to prospective and current travelers all the time. We give advice constantly. And usually what we say is you got to be flexible. You have to be very flexible in location or setting or pay, something like that. And then now in our position, we are the most picky travelers possible. And we for these Alaska jobs, we told the recruiters okay, we need outpatient. We only want to be in Anchorage, part-time, and one-on-one treatments. And it's what are the chances of getting that? But I think we did find that. So
well, I think part of it is now we're pretty well established in the travel healthcare community. So we did what we advise all of you guys to do. We worked with multiple recruiters. We kept our options open, and it worked out for us. But I think also part of the fact that we can be more picky is that we are not set on having to work we would be fine with just one of us working or not taking a contract or waiting a month, because we don't need that back-to-back employment for the financial stability of it, because we've already established financial stability on our own. So I think that's part of how we're able to be more picky. Whereas obviously, if you're someone who's still building your savings and still working on meeting your early financial goals, you need to work back-to-back contracts to meet those financial goals. And if you want to be employed 50 or so weeks a year, then you can't be as picky.
Yeah, it was kind of funny in our interviews too. The manager was asking us like questions about ourselves and questions about the schedule we wanted, and we were like, we'll work anywhere from 1 to 5 days. We don't care. We'll work anywhere from 4 weeks to 13 weeks. We don't care.
Like, well, not really 1 to 5 days, 1 to 3 days.
Yeah, 1 to 3 days.
We didn't want to work full time.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll do a separate video all about Alaska. We do want to get some of the details more finalized, hopefully in the next 2 weeks, because we are supposed to leave around May the 1st to begin our drive. So stay tuned for more on that. We'll do a whole video about it, and then we'll be also posting on Instagram.
Alaska might actually be the place in the world that I'm most excited to go to right now. So should be awesome. I'm really excited about the drive up there and the drive back, some of the national parks in Canada along the way. It should be an amazing trip. We want to go to all the national parks in Alaska while we're up there, either during contract or even, you know, a couple weeks afterwards. We'll have to see how that works out, but there should be really amazing experiences up there.
Yeah, so stay tuned. But we want to answer any questions or comments that you guys have as we wrap up the video. If you want to know anything about our experience in Latin America, traveling internationally during COVID, all that, just let us know if you have any questions in the comments. And even if you're watching the video later, you can either still leave a comment on the video, or you can send us a private message. So let's see, we have some comments here. We got to read them sideways because our phone is still
Suzanne says, have all the clinics you've worked in been one-on-one? No. So it depends on what you mean by one-on-one. So like one-on-one for like an hour or 45 minutes where there's no overlap. Most clinics are not like that. I would say probably half or maybe 60% of the clinics that we've worked in have been like that. Most of them have like patients every 30 minutes, and then you're expected to see each patient for 45 minutes to an hour. So there's an overlap. We've only worked in maybe one clinic, I think just one clinic ever, that had any sort of double booking, and even that was rare.
I'd say more than one clinic. I'd say Fayetteville, I had double booking.
Oh yeah, you did there.
And Fredericksburg.
So two clinics we worked at that had double booking, but we really try to avoid those clinics. So we will work at clinics that have overlapping 30-minute treatments. That's fairly reasonable, especially if you have a tech. But ideally, we want to see like one-on-one for 45 minutes or one-on-one for an hour. So the Alaska clinics are one-on-one for 45 minutes, no techs or anything like that. And that, I think, is probably the ideal.
Yeah, we're super excited. Amy says, I've been seeing pictures and heard that Banff is really cool. Maybe y'all can make your way through there. Yeah, we're hoping.
Yeah.
On our way out there, we're a little more limited on time. We have to get there pretty quickly, so we're not going to make as many stops on the way out to Alaska, but on the way back, we want to take our time and do more of the national parks.
Yeah, and if you don't realize how far away Alaska is, because we didn't really realize how far away it is, from Virginia, it's 4,300-mile drive, so it is a very, very long way. It's going to take us a solid 2 weeks of like driving 7 or 8 hours a day to make it there. So
yeah.
We're pretty limited, but on the way back, we hope to spend like 3 to 4 weeks coming back and stop at Banff and Jasper and some of the other national parks. We need to go to one in Michigan that we haven't been to yet, so hoping to stop there as well.
Yeah, so stay tuned. Allie says, Alaska is beautiful. Yes, we are super excited, Allie. Amy also says, I'm enjoying hearing your wisdom gained through experience. Yeah, thanks, Amy. We try to throw some wisdom in there. Obviously, we've traveled more than most people, so we hope we can shed some light on some of our experiences, because I do think a lot of people idolize international travel, and I think it has its pros and cons, just like anything else.
It's just like travel therapy. I mean, it's not for everybody, and we tell that to more and more people now, because in the beginning we idolized it more, and I know a lot of new travelers do, and prospective travelers, I think it's going to be amazing. It's not always amazing, and international travel is the same. Like, not every travel assignment's going to be the best. Not every country is going to be the best. You have to be flexible, and the more you travel, the more you learn that.
Suzanne says regarding Peru that she thinks Peruvian food is amazing. Yeah. We definitely do too. I already looked up the Peruvian restaurant that's in our hometown. I can't wait to go again, even though we just were in Peru. Oh, Amy also says, I'm thankful that you two have been safe throughout your travels. Oh, that's a good point,
I was
Amy.
going to say, it reminded me as well.
Yeah, so we have been extremely fortunate. We have been to 35 countries. Knock on wood, we've never been robbed, mugged, lost anything, had any bus wrecks, car wrecks, God forbid, plane crashes.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been extremely fortunate.
And in reality, most of our trips have gone really smoothly. Like, not even issues with like planes being delayed. Like, we've only had a few issues like that or canceled. So we've been very fortunate. Yeah, 35 countries, 49 states. We've done a ton of travel.
I'm gonna knock on some wood right now.
Yeah, really.
However, we did have one encounter, our first encounter ever of a near pickpocketing experience on this trip.
We are cautious about this, and I was even more cautious about this recently. I think during COVID, some countries, you're seeing this all over the world, even in the US, there's more people that have lost jobs and poverty and homelessness. Like, all of that is worse now. And with that comes opportunistic theft and crimes like that. So you have to be very cautious these days. You don't want to have your phone out all the time. You don't want to have your wallet exposed, those kind of things. So we know that, and we're pretty experienced travelers.
And I mean, prior to traveling, I had researched all of this to buy purses that are anti-theft, and we're very aware of our surroundings and where we have our belongings out, because we understand that a lot of the local people, if they were able to get their hands on our wallet or our passport or our phone, that could be a month's income or more for them if they were able to sell that item. That could be a really big difference for them and their family, for something to us that it doesn't have as much monetary value, but obviously it's going to be a pain in the butt if we lose our passport or our phone or our wallet. So we're always trying to be very cautious because we understand that risk.
So we went to a little park area in Colombia, in Medellin, at probably 2 or 3 p.m. We didn't think much about it. We rode the public transportation, and on the way back, it was probably 6 or 7 o'clock. It was near sunset, and what we didn't think about was that was rush hour. And so
Medellin in Colombia, they have a metro system, and that's actually the only city in all of Colombia. That's actually a pretty big deal. They have a subway system. Well, it's actually an above ground metro system. Yeah,
so we were on there. The train cars were packed. We rode like a like a gondola type thing down, and then we got on a public train, and it was packed. And so I was thinking about my pockets, and I was thinking about Whitney with her purse, and she had it in front of her. And even thinking about this, we're kind of in a hurry. And as I'm getting off the train, it's like this big crowd of people trying to get off the train all at the same time. Somebody that was staying on the train apparently reached through and grabbed my phone inside my pocket. And I happened to feel it. And, you feel people pushing against you all the time, but it felt weird to me. It felt like a wiggle or something. And because I felt that, I reached for my pocket and I felt their hand inside my pocket on my phone. So I squeezed their hand and then they let go. But someone had reached through and tried to grab my phone out of my pocket.
Like reach through the crowd, because basically this is a tactic they'll use, because Jared would be getting off the train and in 10 seconds the doors would shut, and so even if he got off the train and realized, oh, my phone's gone, the train's gone, and the person's on the train, and gosh, we've known about that trick for years, ever since we traveled in Europe and everything, but it can just happen like that.
It was the first time. It was very close. They were pulling my phone halfway out of my pocket when I felt it. So that would have changed our experience completely.
For sure.
So that was the first time that we've ever really had any issue where we thought someone might actually take something from us, and we've been very lucky.
But it can happen
overall.
anywhere, God. I mean, any of the U.S. cities that have a metro system, it can happen anywhere. So we've been extremely lucky that was the only near incident we ever had, and we were able to stop it too. So yeah. But yeah, thank you. I'm glad too that we've been safe up until this point. Nick says he thinks that Texas was probably the best country that you went to. Yeah. Actually, we've visited Texas a couple of times, but we did some tourist stuff when we were in San Antonio, and I find it so interesting to read about the history of Texas and how, at one point apparently that actually used to be its own country. For a little while it had its sovereignty from Mexico before it became part of the U.S. And
it has its own power grid in case it ever wants to be its own country again.
So Texas is a pretty cool country. I'm a fan. You know. Let's see. Oh, Sarah, this is a really good question. Sarah wants to know, did you have easy access to medicine and doctor when you were feeling sick?
Not really.
I think I talked about this more in our previous video that we did where we talked all about having COVID in Mexico, but it was really tough. In Mexico City in particular, they don't speak a lot of English. It's a lot more like international people that have moved there and speak Spanish. Whereas like if you're in Cancun or whatever, there's English speaking everywhere in those more touristy areas. So I actually would have rather if we'd gotten COVID in Cancun or something. It was a little harder in Mexico City.
Yeah.
I did a little bit of research to try to see if I could find a doctor that spoke English to go to in Mexico City. Did I really like go out of my way to actually walk into any clinics or hospitals? No, but I Googled a lot. We tried to ask our host and we weren't coming up with much. So I ended up doing a telehealth visit via my US insurance while I was there. And to be honest, I mean, it was just basically cold symptoms. So I knew that we needed to just get over-the-counter stuff to manage our symptoms, sore throat, congestion, that kind of thing. But I also had a COVID rash, which was super weird. I got a rash on my leg, and I was most worried about that. So I did want to ask a person face-to-face about that. So I was really thankful I had telehealth access. Otherwise, it would have been tough. It definitely would have been tough.
Yeah, you don't really want to get sick overseas, and that's something that we didn't think much about before. I think as we get older, we realize that we're not as indestructible as we thought we were back when we originally started traveling. And that reminds me of another story. I heard a European traveler when we were in Guatemala. They were talking about a person that they were traveling with, also from Europe. And in Guatemala, that person developed appendicitis and had to have emergency surgery in Guatemala. And they were talking about it was a nightmare. And like basically they don't have modern procedures and they had to like cut their whole abdomen open to remove their appendix. And it involved like multiple weeks in the hospital. And so little things like that now I start to think about more because, what a nightmare that would be. That's an emergency thing that you need. You don't really have an option to get a second opinion or travel somewhere else. You just have to get it there. So that's one of those things that you just kind of hope doesn't happen to you while you're traveling.
Yeah, I mean, and we have thought about it before. Obviously, we always get travel insurance that would cover emergency medical evacuation back to your country, but it just depends on the circumstance whether that would actually occur or not. Like appendicitis, you need it taken care of right away. You don't have time to be evac'd out. If it was a broken bone or something, they could put you in a sling or put you in a cast and set you until you had a chance to get back to the U.S. But like we met some travelers that were traveling in Cambodia when we were in Asia, and they had a motorbike wreck and just a really bad scrape. They got infected, ended up having to be admitted to the hospital in Cambodia to have a minor irrigation surgery. What do they call it? IND, where they debride it.
Drainage and
I think it's IND, irrigation and debridement. I forget. Nurse friends, sorry, but he had to stay overnight in Cambodia. So we've thought about it before, and they always say, like, especially if you're in the more touristy areas, even in places like Thailand or Mexico, there's medical tourism. Western people from the U.S. and Canada go to these places actually, and you can find good English-speaking Western-trained doctors, but it just kind of depends on where you end up or where you happen to be. Like if you're in a small town, yeah, you may not have access to the best medical care, and it may not be like seamless. They may not speak great English, so there are risks there for sure. But in terms of just like access to medication, the cool thing about when you're in other countries is you can usually just go to the pharmacist, and you might have a language barrier. You might need to type it out in Google Translate or something, but they'll just give you medicine. You don't have to have a prescription. And
it's much cheaper, obviously. So that's the pro of being in another country. But the con is that, English speaking can be hard to come by, and sometimes the medical procedures aren't up to date, and it's not the place where you want to have any kind of major thing done unless it's something that you've planned out ahead of time and you have a place in mind and you go there specifically for that. That's a different story. And
I will say too, like, even though you can get medicine, you may not get the exact same type of medicine. Like say you're used to, if you have a cold in the US, you take Dayquil and you just love those little orange pills that have every little magic thing that you need in it. Well, you go to the pharmacist and they're like, we don't have Dayquil. I can give you acetaminophen and antihistamine and like 5 pills that make up what's in Dayquil, so it's not like so easy. Or you can't just get like your favorite cough drops. You'll just have to go with whatever brand they have. So it wasn't ideal, but it was okay. We survived.
I would put this under the column of first world problems though.
Yeah, right, for sure. We were Kroger at our grocery store yesterday, and just at the checkout aisle where like the gum is and stuff, I saw Cepacol throat lozenges, which are like the really good mentholated throat lozenges, the brand that they have here in the US, that if your throat really freaking hurts, they're the best. And I was like, oh my God, I would have loved to have this when we had really sore throats in Mexico. You can just find Cepacol throat lozenges. Yeah, first world problems for sure. All right, let's see if there's any more comments. I think we're probably taking up a lot of time here.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that was all the old ones. Okay, I think that was all your questions. So thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully this was entertaining, educational, and you learned something, and maybe to help you if you're planning a trip in the future to Latin America. Definitely, again, just to recap, top recommendations. Peru was amazing, especially the Cusco region. We loved Lake Atitlan in Guatemala.
Antigua in Guatemala is also an amazing place.
Absolutely.
We definitely recommend those places. Costa Rica, I think, is probably, we missed out a little bit, but I think Costa Rica is also beautiful, especially if you've never been anywhere in Central and South America. It's a really different place to be if you're used to desert climates or West Coast. It's just very different.
Yeah.
Next week, we've got a video. We're going to do a job market update on Sunday before we leave. We haven't been doing many videos recently, but now that we're home for a couple weeks, we can do back-to-back videos, try to do some things while we have consistent internet, get some work done. So job market update, so stay tuned for that. And then 2 weeks, we should be on the road to Alaska.
Yeah, and we'll let you guys know some more information on our Facebook and Instagram pages just about the process of getting to Alaska. And then hopefully once we get there in a few weeks, we'll do a video just talking about all the logistics once we have everything a little more settled.
Yep.
All right, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Hope you have a great night, and happy Easter for those that are celebrating.
Happy Easter. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.